Got it. So you're saying Diddy's an FBI informant, and he's been one for many years.
That's what they say. Nothing never happens, but it's still, like I said, agent.
Let's talk about the filth that's starting to come out in the early days of the Diddy trial. This, of course, is P. Diddy. Surprise, surprise, he's a creep. Surprise, surprise, he's done horrible things.
Gene Deal was once the man standing in the shadows, but commanding a presence so large that nobody dared cross him. The towering figure who served as Diddy's bodyguard for years now finds himself in the middle of a firestorm so dangerous it feels like the past is clawing its way back to claim him. We are watching a man who thought he had seen it all, suddenly staring down threats that feel straight out of the darkest corners of hip-hop history. And these aren't just whispers on the street. The warnings came after Gene opened his mouth about the kind of secrets most men would take to the grave. Secrets about Suge Knight. For decades, Suge has been painted as more myth than man, the kind of figure who could instill fear even from a locked cell. And now, with Suge still serving a decades-long sentence and failing in his latest bid to overturn it, we can feel the chill that runs through the industry when someone dares poke the sleeping giant.
We play by the rules. You got a lot of people playing both sides of the fence. But at the same time, if your name's Suge Knight, the authority's never gonna treat you fair. My whole case in this case wasn't treated fair.
Gene's revelations have turned that chill into a full-on storm. He exposed details that drag Suge's name back into the spotlight at a time when the former death row boss has been fighting to claw his way out of a 28-year sentence. Remember, this is a man who prosecutors said intentionally ran down Terry Carter in a Compton parking lot, a man who, even behind bars, is alleged to have tried pulling strings, crying foul over a legal system that called his attempts at appeal not sincere. And yet, the very fact that Suge's name is back in circulation, being dragged through the mud by one of Diddy's closest former insiders, makes Gene's situation deadly complicated. It's as if exposing Suge Knight has automatically painted a red target on Gene's back, with whispers floating that some people want him quiet permanently.
$25 million. $25 million.
And here's where it turns from dangerous to downright sinister. Instead of protection, Gene is staring down legal troubles of his own. Threats to his safety are one thing, but now the man who claims he's only speaking truth is suddenly facing the possibility of more prison time. We're told it's linked to technicalities and prior entanglements, but the timing reeks of orchestration. Too convenient, too aligned with the moment he dares to pull skeletons from Suge's closet. Observers inside the industry are already asking if powerful players behind the curtain are setting him up to fall, using the system itself as a weapon to silence him. We are left to wonder, is Gene Deal being punished not for what he did, but for what he knows? And if Suge's darkest deeds are only the tip of the iceberg, what else has Gene held back, waiting for the right moment to let slip? We can't ignore the parallel here. Suge Knight's attempts to claw out of prison collapsed when a judge declared he wasn't sincere, blasting his claims of isolation and coercion into the dirt. But even as Suge failed, Gene is suddenly the one in jeopardy, like a pawn moved across the board by forces far larger than himself. It's the perfect distraction. Slam him with legal nightmares and watch the headlines shift away from what he revealed. This isn't just about keeping Suge's reputation intact. It feels like a coordinated effort to bury truths that could still topple legacies. And we are left asking, if these secrets are so explosive that men with power would rather ruin Gene than hear them, just how ugly are the things still hiding in those shadows?
When we got back to New York City, Wendy Williams was in Philly at a new station.
But Gene's story doesn't end with Suge. No, the circle tightens when we remember who he once stood guard for. Sean Diddy Combs, now a man entangled in a trial of his own that threatens to end with a life sentence. The feud between Gene and Diddy has only grown sharper with time. What started as a former employee speaking his truth has turned into an icy cold war, with Gene dropping bomb after bomb about the mogul's private life, his decisions, his empire, and in an industry already bracing for Diddy's explosive court battles, Gene's voice is suddenly one of the loudest, adding fuel to the fire. Is it any wonder then that Gene finds himself squeezed from all sides?
There is a partial verdict in the Diddy case after 2 days. The jury has reached unanimous decisions on 4 of the 5 counts. The problem is that 5th count means that we don't get to find out what the verdicts are on the other 4 because they are hung up on...
Let's not forget that Diddy's trial has already spun into chaos. Prosecutors admit one of their key witnesses has vanished, a woman known as Victim 3 who is supposed to unleash very personal and explosive details. Without her, the case looks weaker. And yet, the accusations hanging over Diddy are brutal. Racketeering, trafficking, transportation for illicit purposes, and those notorious freak-offs described as nights of excess where boundaries disappeared. He has pleaded not guilty, of course, but the possibility of life in prison is real, and his team's defense that this was all consensual has done little to silence the roar around him. Gene Deal, standing outside this legal hurricane, holds the kind of inside knowledge that could tip public perception even further against Diddy. That alone makes him dangerous to the mogul's empire. Rumors now swirl that Gene's legal troubles may not just be coincidence. Some voices inside the industry are already speculating that Diddy himself, or people close to him, could be nudging those troubles along, amplifying the pressure, making sure Gene never gets too comfortable telling his stories. After all, Gene has hinted at things bigger than just Suge Knight. He has whispered about incidents in Diddy's past, about the kind of knowledge that could shatter what's left of the mogul's image. If he's already talking about Suge, what's stopping him from stepping on Diddy's toes even harder?
That boy life is dangerous. His life isn't, he's just not dangerous with the they said he was doing, but he's in danger. He knows too much.
And here's the chilling thought. Diddy's name has surfaced in more than one arena lately, not just in the trial we all see on the news. His name was linked more than 40 times in transcripts tied to Shakur's still haunting case, with claims, unproven but impossible to ignore, that he once placed a fortune on the heads of Shakur and Suge. Diddy calls it pure fiction, yet the whispers refuse to fade. Put that next to the claims of his private parties, the missing witnesses, the looming life sentence, and suddenly Gene Deal isn't just an ex-bodyguard with a grudge. He's a man holding keys to stories that connect some of hip-hop's darkest chapters. And if he is silenced, either through threats or through the system, we may never hear the full extent of what he knows. Which leaves us staring into the question no one wants to ask out loud: just how deep does this go? And who's really pulling the strings behind Gene Deal's unraveling?
Walked in with a cigar by himself. Alicia Keys started running.
The fallout from Gene's revelations is rippling far beyond the courtroom and prison walls. His decision to put Suge Knight's name back into circulation is stirring a storm across the music industry, reopening conversations many thought were long buried. We are seeing whispers leak out from old tour managers, forgotten producers, and label insiders who suddenly remember favors owed, meetings hushed, or threats that once made careers vanish overnight. They're spreading, if Gene is bold enough to air out the most guarded secrets of a man like Suge, then who's safe? There are executives who made their fortunes in the same era, artists whose careers rose on deals never meant to see the daylight. With one man talking, it's as if an invisible domino has tipped, and the industry is bracing for a chain reaction. Could this be the moment when the curtain finally falls, exposing the deals and betrayals that built the empire of hip-hop in the 90s? Or will those at the top push harder than ever to smother the spark before it becomes a blaze?
Look at Diddy, for instance. Let's take a look at him. Let's take a look at, he has videos. He has videos of the parties. Now, what I've heard, which I don't know how much of it is in mainstream media, I don't really follow the story that much, but what I've heard from friends that are attorneys, friends of mine that have represented me before, agents and so on, is there's a bidding war going on right now.
This paranoia is not abstract. It has already begun shaping behavior. Lawyers are circling like hawks, fielding calls from stars who want to know how close their names might be to Gene's testimony. Veteran insiders insist there's more than just Suge Knight at risk. A former label road manager has claimed that certain powerful figures are terrified Gene might start connecting dots between the East Coast-West Coast conflicts and the legal dramas unfolding today. When Diddy's name is being invoked in everything from federal trafficking trials to secret recordings about Shakur's shooting, it is no surprise that Gene's own accusations suddenly feel too close for comfort. Each revelation he drops drags another name toward the fire, and the silence from some corners only makes the speculation louder. For Gene himself, the storm outside is only part of the battle. Imagine being a man who spent years as a protector, the silent force at someone else's back, now forced to live as a target. Friends describe him as restless, wary, even paranoid. And who wouldn't be after threats start following every revelation? He is trapped in a vice. On one side, the pressure to speak truth and clear his conscience, and on the other, the threat that every word he utters could deepen his legal troubles or worse. The psychological weight of that tension is crushing. Every phone call could be a warning, every shadow a message. We can only speculate on the emotional toll, but what is certain is that Gene is not just fighting for credibility, he is fighting to hold on to his peace of mind.
Did you ever have the opportunity where you got invited and you said no to it?
Hell yeah.
What was the consequences when you said no?
Puffy invited me for weeks, asking me to come and teach him how to, wanted me to be his acting coach for a while. Go there and he's sitting around just looking. I'm like, okay, what's the material you want to work on? He's just looking at me.
And here lies the cruel paradox. The very threats that were supposed to silence him might instead push him to speak louder. Insiders wonder if Gene, feeling the walls closing in, might choose to reveal even more explosive secrets simply as protection. The logic is chilling, but makes sense. Once the information is public, he's harder to silence. If he holds back, he remains vulnerable. It raises the question, what else is still locked away in his memory? Could he expose connections between Suge Knight's downfall, the ongoing cases against Diddy, and the never-ending questions around Shakur and Biggie? We've already seen court filings naming Diddy dozens of times in transcripts about Shakur's assassination. Imagine the fallout if Gene added his own first-hand confirmation to those whispers.
Well, the things that I experienced with him were monster-like. That stuff almost destroyed my life.
Meanwhile, the paranoia spreads through the industry like wildfire. The timing is too sharp, too cruel. Diddy is in court battling charges that could put him away for life. Suge is locked down, his appeal denied as not sincere, and in the middle stands Gene, an ordinary man with extraordinary knowledge. He is not a mogul with money to buy silence, nor a legend with millions of fans to shield him. He is vulnerable, which makes his defiance even more dangerous. That vulnerability also fuels speculation. Is he strong enough to withstand the relentless weight of enemies who want him erased from the conversation? Or will the constant pressure grind him down until he breaks?
The feds, Al Capone style, have not charged everything under the sun. They've charged 3 main charges: racketeering, trafficking, and the transport of. And I'll tell you, I don't know about the racketeering charge. It's pretty sweeping, and I'll tell you what the general elements are.
What often gets overlooked in Gene's saga is just how wide his circle once stretched. Working in the background during hip-hop's most volatile years, he brushed shoulders not only with Suge and Diddy, but with an entire constellation of figures whose influence extended well beyond music. From executives with deep ties to corporate sponsors, to promoters who controlled entire touring circuits, Gene was positioned to witness how deals were struck, favors were exchanged, and silence was purchased. It's this network that makes his current position so precarious. For every revelation he drops, there may be half a dozen powerful names quietly calculating how much of their past could come tumbling out with him.
Well, all due respect to Puffy, you gotta realize one thing. He didn't start off like that. I'm quite sure somebody taught him that.
Industry insiders whisper about a network of silence, an unwritten pact forged in the 90s and carried through the decades. These weren't just artists protecting their reputations. These were moguls safeguarding entire empires. If Gene exposes even a fraction of what he allegedly knows, the dominoes could reach not just musicians, but film producers, fashion labels, and brand partnerships that grew fat off the aura of danger and rebellion. The stakes are staggering, and the weight of those combined interests could be enough to crush one man standing alone.
So Puffy benefited more by Biggie not being here than Biggie being here.
We also have to remember that Gene's past connections weren't limited to industry boardrooms. His role placed him in proximity to people linked with street organizations, security outfits, and shadowy figures whose influence rarely makes headlines, but whose power is undeniable. That overlap between corporate polish and street enforcement is what made the hip-hop empire of the 90s both electrifying and terrifying. Now, decades later, those same connections could be reactivated against him. Not with overt threats in the tabloids, but through quiet moves behind the scenes, sudden legal troubles, financial pressure, or orchestrated character attacks designed to strip away his credibility before he can say more. There's also the possibility that some names want Gene's silence not because of what he has already revealed, but because of what he hasn't. Whispers suggest he holds knowledge of off-the-record deals involving music rights, hidden payouts, and even connections between label executives and political players who found ways to profit from the chaos of the East Coast-West Coast rivalry. These are the kinds of secrets that could shift entire narratives about who really benefited from that turbulent era. If Gene ever chose to unseal that vault, the blast radius would stretch far beyond the confines of hip-hop. In that sense, Gene isn't just up against Suge Knight's shadow or Diddy's ongoing trials. He may be facing an entire invisible wall of influence, one woven from decades of alliances, favors, and unspoken debts. Every name he hints at risks pulling another thread loose, and that's what makes his current struggle feel less like a battle with individuals and more like a war against an entire system determined to preserve itself. It's not just Suge or Diddy who have reasons to keep him quiet. It could be an entire class of power players, united in silence, each one prepared to make sure his voice never grows loud enough to break their carefully maintained facade. What's remarkable is how much of this feels like history repeating itself. In the 90s, the East Coast-West Coast feud was driven by shadows, half-truths, and rumors no one dared confirm. Now, decades later, we are watching another cycle of silence and intimidation unfold, with the same names haunting the story: Thug, Diddy, Gene. all tangled in a web that refuses to let go. If Gene has even more revelations waiting, then the balance of power in hip-hop could shift again, just as violently as it did 30 years ago. And this time, the fallout wouldn't just be about diss tracks and label rivalries. It could topple empires, rewrite legacies, and stain reputations permanently.
So Jake tell him, look, we don't got to be doing all this. We can take you to that restroom right over there. We can get out. If you win, I'll shake your hand. But you ain't gonna win. When I whoop your ass, you can shake my hand. We don't gotta be doing all this talking.
Which brings us to the chilling reality. The biggest secrets may still be untold. We are left asking ourselves, if Gene can survive the threats, the legal battles, and the enemies circling him, what else might he reveal? Could he finally tie together the threads linking Suge's downfall, Diddy's trial, and Shakur's unsolved end? Or will those threads be cut before he has the chance? The danger is real, the stakes could not be higher, and the silence of certain players only makes the whispers louder. So here's the question we're left with. Is Gene Deal standing on the edge of a historic reckoning that could finally bring the truth crashing down? Or is he simply one step away from being silenced forever? Let us know what you think in the comments. Who do you believe is really pulling the strings? Until next time, stay sharp, stay curious, and remember, the truth has a way of clawing its way out no matter how deep it's buried.